But we are dealing with a terrorist neighbor who is looking today, searching for certain ways. Somewhere, Belarus was used and continues to be used as a staging ground. Now, even the North Korean military has been taking direct part in the war against Ukraine for some time, but on Russia's side. And plus, right now, there's this process of deploying, of rolling out a North Korean unit with a dozen ballistic missiles. How, after all, should we react to this? How should we reflect on this? This is just it's just another turn in this kind of partnership. But in reality, you and I are realists. So what is behind the realities of this information, of this news?
The fact that North Korea has sensed the benefit of mutual cooperation with Russia and a chance to strengthen its own military technical capabilities and even its regional and global standing, all while facing no negative consequences whatsoever. Because, strictly speaking, what has actually happened regarding the interaction between Russia and North Korea? Did it receive any additional pressure or face any risks for itself? Absolutely not. Moreover, Russia, a member of the UN Security Council that signed off on very strict sanctions regarding North Korea, is now completely ignoring those sanctions. Moreover, Russia, a country that, again, is supposedly a responsible, as it claims, member of the UN Security Council, is saying that North Korea has the right to nuclear weapons. And right now, the issue of denuclearization is not even being discussed. In other words, the existence of these benefits, of course, strengthens the desire of North Korea and the leader of North Korea himself to be involved in this process. Because, well, first of all, we have already discussed many times that the presence of North Korean military personnel is about gaining experience that North Korea's immediate neighbors do not have. Military technical capabilities are not just about the opportunity for North Korea to obtain technologies that Russia previously refused to provide. It is also about participating in a new, modern war where drones are used and where combat is structured in a completely different way. And North Korean military personnel are gaining this experience. And North Korea, in turn, is getting the opportunity to produce, for example, drones on its own territory. And now, regarding the missiles, we remember that the first use was what led to casualties in Kharkiv in January of 2024. And back then, our specialists said that these missiles were very inaccurate and the margin of error was approximately 3 kilometers. After that, these missiles were falling in fields, falling somewhere into people's homes. But nevertheless, according to the UN Monitoring Commission, during this time, North Korea has provided Russia with 150 ballistic missiles. But in return, North Korea received the opportunity to improve the technical glitches that exist in their ballistics. And our representatives from the main Directorate of Intelligence recently stated that North Korean missiles have significantly improved their accuracy. The margin of error is now 500 meters. Unfortunately, as we can see, this latest use in the Kryvyi district, where a family died, still points to the existing inaccuracies of North Korean missiles and their deeply destructive nature. Because the missile hit a house where a large family of parents and children died. And what are the risks for us from the increase in this cooperation? Terror in Russia is one of the meccas.
Now let's talk about the risks. We're going to talk about the risks now. So it turns out that, well, North Korea, hypothetically, yes, is now using the opportunity of this format of cooperation with the Russian Federation in order to develop certain technological aspects for itself, right? That is perhaps for some future perspective and the participation of North Korea, and perhaps not just participation, but as an initiator of military conflicts in the region, right? I mean, it's not for nothing that North Korea, well, let's say, is working through certain points. There is a persistent internal impression that this is so that it can later be used on the battlefield, and also perhaps to use those same missiles to Well, let's say destroy certain territories and certain regions from the sky, from the air.
Absolutely. North Korea is in a state of war with South Korea. North Korea has declared South Korea a hostile state in its constitution, changed its approach, and abandoned the idea of reunification. And furthermore, the refusal of any dialogue with South Korea, no matter how hard the current South Korean president tries to send signals to North Korea. Of course, North Korea does not hide the fact that nuclear weapons and missiles are the foundation of their state and the basis of guarantees for Kim Jong Un, for his family, for the continuation of his dynasty, and for the preservation of his power. And that is why in their constitution, again, they have enshrined the further deep development of their strategic forces. And we are talking about ballistics here. Improving ballistics is one of the goals for North Korea because, firstly, it can be used against its closest enemies, South Korea and Japan, and secondly, it can also be a carrier for nuclear warheads. Therefore, of course, it is of great interest to North Korea right now to gain not only war experience, but we have already heard from you the next level of interaction between Russia and North Korea. This is the participation of North Korean missile forces with their launchers in the terrorizing of Ukraine. So it turns out that, unfortunately, they will be tracking the errors of their missiles on us and improving these missiles for their future goals in the region. But before they use these goals in the region, of course, we understand how much more Ukrainian infrastructure will be destroyed, how many more people could be killed. Because you mentioned in your report about our intelligence data that at least 120 missiles from North Korea will be sent to Russia. And that's not the limit because Kim Jong Un is currently going around visiting his military factories. And we are currently seeing rampant construction and expansion of North Korea's military infrastructure, of military factories. And according to the latest data, he has given orders to increase shell production by 2.5 times and to increase ballistic missile production capabilities by 2.5 times over the course of 5 years. We understand, of course, that the increase in these areas is primarily aimed at supporting Russian aggression against Ukraine. And you mentioned earlier that the axis of evil is getting closer to Europe. And of course, Russia, which sees a possible future conflict with NATO countries, will use North Korea's capabilities to jointly commit potential acts of aggression against European countries, especially since they are now very actively integrating with each other in this direction.